Welcome back to my channel. It was a quiet morning in early 2020 when the presses at the U.S. Mint in West Point began to hum. The America, the Beautiful Quarters program, already nearing its conclusion, was preparing to release its latest installment, honoring the National Park of American Samoa. A charming design, indeed, featuring a pair of fruit bats hanging tenderly upside down, evoking an unexpected gentleness. Most saw the image as whimsical, a creative nod to the wildlife of the Pacific. But beneath the surface of that casual charm, something was forming. A fracture. A flaw. The coin was never meant to be anything more than a commemorative quarter, one in a long line of 56. Millions were to be struck, circulated, spent, and forgotten. The West Point Mint, notably used more for bullion coinage than circulating coinage, had been designated to release quarters with a special W mint mark to encourage collecting. The U.S. Mint's strategy was working. Hobbyists and treasure hunters alike rushed to banks, rolled coins between their fingers, and peered closely at each one in search of those elusive W marks. Few noticed anything unusual at first. The coins slipped through hands, into pockets, vending machines, piggy banks. Then one day, something peculiar turned up. It was tucked into a modest roll purchased from a small-town bank in Pennsylvania. Jonathan Price, a 44-year-old high school science teacher and amateur coin collector, had been searching casually for W quarters to add to his growing folder. His method was simple: acquire, inspect, catalog, repeat. It had never yielded anything more valuable than a slight doubling on a 2015 Homestead quarter. But this time, as he leaned in under the fluorescent lamp on his desk, the glint of something unexpected made his eyes narrow. The bat design was as expected, but the quarter had an odd interruption, a faint bulge near the rim, and a crack that wasn't just wear. It seemed raised. Alive, almost. He turned it slowly, inspecting the obverse. Washington's profile was solid, the usual inscriptions intact. The W mark shone proudly beneath. "In God we trust." But to the left, just above the date, there was a tear. Not a literal tear, but something that resembled one. A die crack stretching like a hairline fracture from the rim, curling slightly downward. He blinked, took a photo, compared it to others online. And then, without yet knowing what he had, he labeled it with a post-it note. "Odd strike? Check forums." By evening, he'd posted in a collector's forum under the handle J. Price 76. Responses trickled in. Most dismissed it. Just a minor die chip. But one response stood out. A user named QuarterQuest replied, "Check for doubling around the bat's ear. Look at the mouth. And check the reverse rim from 7 to 10 o'clock. Zoom in." Jonathan did. What he saw changed everything. The rim was doubled. Not in the usual, expected way, but almost shadowed, like a ghost outline. And the bat's ear? Split ever so slightly, as though struck with a misaligned die. The mouth was puckered, more deeply than in regular issues. And now that he saw it, he couldn't unsee it. The anomaly was deliberate, embedded, buried within the process, not damage from circulation or post-mint mishandling. He knew he had to verify it. Over the following weeks, Jonathan sent photos to experts, local dealers, even contacted the Numismatic Guarantee Company. One specialist responded with care, intrigued. "There's something here. It might be part of a batch from a worn reverse die. Could be a retained cut forming near the rim." The coin was submitted for grading. When it returned, it bore a label he hadn't anticipated: 2020 W Samoa quarter, major die break, retained cud, MS66. That was when everything began to shift. Forums buzzed. The coin was quietly dubbed the Bat Crack, and Jonathan's inbox filled with questions, offers, and speculation. One collector offered $800. Another promised $200. But he held firm. Not out of greed, but curiosity. What if this wasn't the only one? Indeed, it wasn't. As the months progressed, reports began to emerge from other collectors. quarters with similar anomalies, variations of the same die error, began surfacing. Some showed partial breaks, others retained cuds in more advanced stages. Each bore the same traits, struck at West Point, bearing the W mint mark and featuring the same strange rim swell between 7 and 10 o'clock on the reverse. The coins were forming a pattern, revealing that the error had not been isolated to a single strike, but rather a stretch of production, perhaps hundreds, maybe more. The rarity of the W quarters already made them sought after. Only 2 million of each design were struck with the West Point mark. But within that limited batch, these error coins, less than 1% of 2 million, held an additional layer of exclusivity. Auction houses began to whisper. Coin World ran a feature. The back cracks of West Point, a new numismatic mystery? Prices climbed. A pristine MS-67 example sold privately for $2,400. Another, lesser grade, reached $900 on eBay. And still, the hunt continued. Jonathan tracked the value obsessively, not for wealth, but for validation. He watched listings, bookmarked forums, and logged each verified specimen in a personal spreadsheet. By fall of 2021, the known population had risen to just over 24 examples. Each bore slight differences, suggesting that the die break evolved over time. The earliest examples had only hairline cracks. The later ones, like Jonathan's, showed full, retained cuds, swelling near the rim like molten metal caught in the act of hardening. It was not just a coin anymore. It was a timeline, a story in metal. But just as the narrative seemed complete, a twist emerged. A Florida collector, Ava Lorne, posted a discovery in early 2022, a 2020 W Samoa quarter, similar in error, but struck off-center by nearly 5%. The cud was present, but the coin's alignment was visibly off, so much so that part of the bat's wing was clipped, with the coin's edge encroaching on the central design. More than a die break, this one was a cascade of errors, off-center strike, die crack, retained cud, all in one. It was the first multi-error example ever seen from that series. Certified MS-64, it fetched a staggering $6,100 at auction. That revelation sent the community into overdrive. If multi-errors existed, then the production conditions at West Point during that early 2020 period had been more compromised than previously believed. Theories emerged. Some speculated that the mint, under pandemic pressures and a shrinking workforce, had allowed deteriorating dies to remain in use longer than usual. Others posited that the combination of bat imagery and mint errors had created a perfect storm of collector obsession, a thematic link between a virus-ridden world and a bat-themed coin struck during the chaos of COVID's onset. Symbolism feeding into valuation, the market reacted sharply. Over the next year, standard bat crack specimens began to rise steadily. MS-66s that once sold for $1,000 now surpass $2,800. Lower grade examples crossed $1,000. Even ungraded coins, raw from bank rolls, fetched hundreds. A coin meant to commemorate a national park had become a relic of a unique historical moment. Pandemic, pressure, production flaws, all immortalized in alloy. But the biggest revelation was still to come. In late 2023, a sealed box of original West Point Samoa quarter rolls was opened in California by an estate liquidator clearing the contents of a late collector's vault. Most rolls contained ordinary specimens, bright, uncirculated, but otherwise unremarkable. Except one. One roll was almost entirely composed of error coins. 13 back crack quarters in various stages of the die break. One of them bore not only the break, but also a misaligned obverse strike that left Washington's bust shadowed and his "In God We Trust" motto faint and ghostlike. It was a double error, nearly a triple, when combined with a minor planchet lamination along the rim. When the story broke, major grading firms clamored to see it. One firm called it the triple anomaly of the 2020 W Series. The coin graded MS-65, and was placed at a private auction. Its final hammer price? $14, 300. And Jonathan? He watched all this unfold with quiet amazement. He still had his original. He declined every offer, kept it in a velvet-lined box in his home office. To him, the coin was more than an investment. It was the spark of a journey, the small shimmer on a bat's ear that had unraveled a minting mystery. He hadn't chased fortune. He'd chased understanding. And now, as others continued the hunt, his coin remained untouched. A symbol not just of rarity, but of patience. Collectors continue to scan rolls, examine rim edges, photograph hairline cracks. The bat on the coin hangs upside down, unmoved, unknowingly immortalized. And the error that began as a whisper beneath a fluorescent lamp has become a legend in metal, a story still unfolding, one quarter at a time. The machines at the Denver Mint had been running for weeks. Metal blanks fed in with rhythmic precision, presses stamping profile after profile of George Washington onto the shimmering copper-nickel canvas. The year was 1974, a time of inflation, fuel shortages, and shifting trust in institutions. Still, quarters had to be struck. Bills had to be paid. Change had to be made. No one suspected that amid the millions of coins produced, something unintentional was quietly embedding itself into the heart of America's pocket change. It wasn't rare for minting equipment to wear down, especially at the Denver facility, which bore the pressure of a nation in full economic swing. Tooling delays, worn dies, and overuse weren't uncommon. But in this case, a specific reverse die, one that should have been pulled for reconditioning, was left in service. It had a fracture, not catastrophic, but subtle, hiding near the lower curve of the eagle's left talon. Each strike left a faint impression, so faint it was overlooked in most cases. But under specific conditions, with specific pressure, the damage began to show more clearly, taking shape slowly, like a ghost building its form. That's exactly what Roger Mansfield noticed. Not right away, he'd seen thousands of quarters pass through his hands. A retired machinist from Illinois, Roger had a habit of checking his change. Not obsessively, just a reflex picked up during decades of working with metal and calibrations. It was one afternoon in 1997, while sorting a handful of coins from a gas station coffee purchase, that a strange detail caught his eye. The quarter in question was dull, worn, but the eagle on the back looked off. The feathers, typically sharp and symmetrical, seemed uneven. He chalked it up to circulation wear and tossed it aside. Days later, sorting through the same pile, he picked it up again. This time he flipped it under a desk lamp and took a magnifying glass to it. There was, unmistakably, a raised crack near the rim, just left of the arrow cluster. A raised ridge, oddly curved, almost like the outline of a claw. It wasn't a gouge. It was part of the coin, born from the die itself. His mind went to his old machinist days. Metal fatigue. Stress fractures. He knew that wasn't supposed to happen on government-grade dies. He placed the coin in a flip, labeled it, and forgot about it for a few years. It wasn't until 2005, while reorganizing his modest coin folders, that he stumbled upon it again. But this time, the hobby had evolved. The internet had changed everything. Forums, digital catalogs, auction archives, all within reach. He posted a photo of the coin on a collector's board and asked a simple question. "Is this a strike-through or a die break?" The response came back faster than expected. "Looks like a retained cud," someone said. Another user added, "Could be the beginning stage of a late-stage die break. Do you see any rim bulge between 4 and 5 o'clock?" He checked again. The bulge was there. Slight, but real. The thread exploded. Others posted photos of similar coins. A pattern began to emerge. 1974 D quarters with the same mysterious bulge, a weak spread in the tail feathers, and a faint but consistent raised crack above the R in $quarter. The error wasn't widespread, but it wasn't unique either. It had simply gone unnoticed, blending in with the wear of time and the grime of circulation, Rogers submitted his coin to a grading service in 2006. It came back as 1974 D quarter, reverse die crack, retained cud, 55 Australian dollars. Not mint state, but solid. The label alone stirred attention. A dealer offered him $300. He passed. A year later, another offer came, $450. Again, he declined. He wasn't ready to part with it. Not yet.by 2010, the coin's reputation had grown quietly. Specialized error coin collectors began cataloging known examples. It turned out that the die crack had progressed over time, resulting in several identifiable stages of the error. Early-stage coins had just the rim bulge. Mid-stage coins, like Rogers, showed full retained cuds. And in rare late-stage examples, the cud had collapsed completely, creating a void on the die that resulted in a dramatic raised blob on the coin's reverse. Only 3 such examples had been confirmed. In 2013, one of those dramatic cuds, nicknamed the Eagle's Scar, appeared in a private auction in New Jersey. Graded XF40, it still managed to fetch $1,600. That same year, a coin similar to Rogers in 58 Australian dollars sold online for just over $900. Value, it seemed, was trending upward, not due to hype, but due to verification. The coins had been hiding in plain sight, and now the market was beginning to acknowledge their uniqueness. Then came a twist no one expected. In 2019, a researcher from a numismatic study group cross-referenced die cracks across state quarters and pre-state issues, attempting to understand the failure points in mint tooling across decades. When the researcher reached the 1974 D quarter, he uncovered something unusual. The die used in the known back crack quarters from 2020 had a nearly identical failure point in its early phase. That is, the cud in the Samoa quarters developed at the same position on the reverse as the 1974 error. Not just a coincidence in location, but one in geometry. He published his findings, suggesting that certain die hubs over time may develop fatigue in structurally similar areas due to design stress. That revelation sparked fresh interest in the older error coin. Suddenly, the 1974 D quarter wasn't just an anomaly. It was a potential predecessor, a predictive artifact of die stress patterns, important not just to collectors, but to mint engineers studying failure propagation over time. Rogers' coin, which had sat quietly in a folder for years, was now something else entirely. A piece of a puzzle. By 2022, examples of the 1974 D cud error in higher grades were commanding premiums. MS62s were going for $1,300. A rare MS64, with clear cut formation and strong rim structure, crossed the $2,100 mark. But the real surprise came in 2023 when a specimen, verified as the final stage of the die's life, complete with a fully collapsed cud, partial strike doubling on the obverse, and perfect alignment with the known fault line, sold through a private bidding war. The final price? $106,000. Roger, now well into his 70s, had watched the entire arc unfold from his quiet home in Illinois. He still had his 55 Australian dollars, now encapsulated in a newer holder with a revised label that read, Reverse Die Evolution Type 1, Retained Cud, 1974 D quarter. He'd never sold it. And when asked why, his answer was simple. This coin taught me how to look more closely at the ordinary. That's worth more to me than a check. Collectors continue to search their jars, inspect the reverse of every 1974 D quarter, run their fingers across the eagle's tail, looking for that quiet scar, left not by a machine, but by time, stress, and history. The kind of flaw that turns a coin into a story. And in this case, into a 6-figure legend. The presses were relentless that year. At the Denver and Philadelphia mints, billions of coins were produced to meet the nation's demand. Among them, the 2004 state quarters were churned out in enormous numbers, each representing one of the 5 states honored that year: Michigan, Florida, Texas, Iowa, and Wisconsin. It was Wisconsin, however, that would soon whisper its secret through the ridged edge of a 25-cent piece, hidden in the curls of a cornstalk. And alarms were raised at first. The design, featuring a cow, a wheel of cheese, and an ear of corn, seemed innocuous enough. But tucked into that agricultural portrait was a detail so subtle, so easily dismissed, that it escaped the attention of mint workers, collectors, and casual spenders alike. Until someone finally saw it and realized something wasn't right. It was a snowy morning in Neenah, Wisconsin, when Gina Halvorson noticed the glint of an odd coin in her change jar. A part-time librarian and full-time collector, she had long admired the state quarters program, but wasn't prone to obsessing over errors. She simply liked finding interesting pieces, quirks of history, little surprises. That morning, while sorting through quarters to roll for the bank, she noticed a Wisconsin coin with an unusually raised mark near the base of the corn husk. She paused, held it under the light. The left leaf of the corn ear had an extra protrusion. A bump. It didn't look like damage or grime. It looked intentional. Almost as if there was a second leaf growing from the base of the first, shaped like a tiny spear. But why? She set it aside and examined a few others. Most were normal. But later that week, at a local flea market, she found another with the same extra detail, though slightly different in shape. This one had a bump higher up the leaf, almost like a growth. That's when she started to ask questions. A call to a local coin shop turned into a flood of speculation. By early spring, word had spread. Some 2004 Wisconsin quarters featured what collectors began calling the extra leaf error. Theories abounded. Some claimed it was deliberate, an inside joke by a mint worker. Others blamed worn dies or clogged presses. But what made the mystery so captivating was its inconsistency. There wasn't just one version of the leaf. There were two. The high leaf and the low leaf. Each unique, each accidental. And both suddenly very, very desirable. At first, they sold for modest premiums. $10. Then $50. By summer, collectors across the country were hunting rolls of 2004 Wisconsin quarters. Entire bank branches in the Midwest were being cleaned out by eager numismatists searching for those elusive leaves. The media picked up the story. News anchors smiled over shots of enlarged corn ears. The U.S. Mint issued a statement saying the anomalies were likely the result of die gouges, unintentional but genuine errors. Gina, ever humble, submitted both her finds for grading. The low leaf came back MS-64. The high leaf was an MS-66. Not flawless, but crisp, clean examples of the now famous error. Over the years, prices fluctuated. As more coins surfaced, the market adjusted. Raw examples could be found for a few $100s, sometimes less. But pristine, high-grade versions remained rare. Only a handful had achieved MS-67 or higher. Those fetched thousands. Then something changed. In 2018, a Wisconsin-based numismatic research team discovered something curious. After analyzing hundreds of extra leaf specimens, they noticed variations even within the same leaf type. Some had finer points, others broader bases. It appeared that not one, but multiple dies had been affected, each producing slightly different anomalies. This wasn't a single rogue die gone bad. It was a systemic event. That revelation added a layer of complexity to the story. Suddenly, collectors began differentiating between subtypes. Type A low leaf, type B high leaf. The hunt deepened, and just when the buzz had settled, another twist emerged. In late 2022, a collector in Arizona came forward with a 2004 Wisconsin quarter, Philadelphia Mint, not Denver, that showed a faint but distinct variation of the extra leaf. Until then, all known errors had originated from Denver. This one sparked controversy. Could the error have spanned both mints? Or was it a carefully crafted counterfeit? The coin was submitted to 2 grading services, both of which authenticated it as genuine, but labeled it unconfirmed die variety. The debate ignited forums and collector circles alike. Some dismissed it as die were mimicking the Denver error. Others believed it was a clue that the scope of the mistake had been far wider than originally assumed. Through it all, Gina kept her 2 coins. She watched as prices climbed, fell, and climbed again. She watched as experts dissected each bump and ridge, assigning names and codes to leaves that no farmer had ever imagined. She was amused by the whole thing, how a tiny slip in metal could ripple across a nation of collectors and turn a simple state quarter into a relic of mystery and value. And value, indeed, continued to evolve. By 2024 top grade, high leaf, errors in MS67 condition were commanding over $8,000. A rare MS68 specimen, one of only 2 known, sold in a private transaction for $11,400. The low leaf coins, slightly less dramatic in appearance, still pulled strong prices, with MS67s regularly crossing $6,000. Then came the auction.I in early 2025. A prominent collection was put up for sale, one that included what was deemed the finest known set of Wisconsin-era quarters, both high leaf and low leaf varieties, each graded MS68, slid together in a custom labeled case. Provenance, perfect preservation, and media attention collided. The bidding was fierce. Collectors knew what they were seeing, not just coins, but history, wrapped in agricultural symbolism and wrapped tighter in mint-made mystery. When the gavel fell, the combined set sold for a staggering $119,000. From the chilled fingers of a Wisconsin librarian to the polished counters of an auction house, the journey of the 2004 Wisconsin quarter had come full circle. An unintentional flourish of metal, a twist of fate in a cornleaf, and a quiet reminder that sometimes the smallest imperfection is what makes a thing unforgettable.